What's going on, everyone? This is Talks with Kenny, and here today we'll be reacting to The Real History of Feminism by Ben Shapiro. Let's take a look.
It's hard to look at the world today and not to be confused. Why are so many people in favor of abortion on demand all the way up till birth? Why are so many people believers that men can be women and women can be men? Why is any of this happening? The answer lies in the history of the feminist movement. This video is brought to you by Birch Gold.
Before we get into the video, my initial thoughts about feminism is that it was never about equality to me. It was always about just women's rights. Whatever women need, that's it, right? So in the beginning, I think feminism used the pretext of equality, right? But once they got equality, they pushed further and further to the point where now more women graduate college than men. But these same women, these same feminists that says they're for equality, they're not putting any initiatives for men to catch up to the women. And that just in this face, like you know them by their fruit, right? How they conduct themselves is how it really is. And seeing how feminism and the transitions that every wave went through, that's the core like thesis that's still consistent from the first all the way to current. And we'll go through it. You make up your own minds. I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm just telling you how I'm thinking about things. Let's continue.
The term feminist has been used over time to mean a lot of different stuff. For most people, it means something pretty simple. Women should not be discriminated against just because they're women. This doesn't mean that women and men aren't different and distinct. It doesn't mean that women make the same choices that men do or that they ought to make those choices.
Equality of outcome is impossible, in my view. Like, unless you're under an authoritarian rule, that's the only way you can guarantee equal outcome. But equal opportunity, hey, everyone got a shot. Everyone can try out. But not everyone's going to make the team. And I agree. I believe this was first wave feminism was trying to do in the beginning.
It doesn't mean that female biology works the same way as male biology, or that all natural differences ought to be just obliterated in the name of false equality. For most people, feminism just means that we all ought to be treated the same. In order to understand where the feminist movement has actually gone, how it moved from that basic idea to what it is now, we have to examine the history of feminism. So we begin with first wave feminism. A lot of people have used this metaphor to describe feminism. It's a series of waves. They're either 3 or 4, depending on how you define the waves. First wave feminism was typically meant to encompass the Enlightenment era philosophy that women ought to have the same basic rights as men, like the right to vote, the right to own property, the right to speak freely, the right to be considered on equal terms for jobs.
So my little 2 cents here is that I agree with all those things, but there's a caveat to the voting, because feminism whole premise is that women wanted to be treated equal to men, right? So the right to vote came with the condition, the cost, you will say, that you have to be drafted for the military in a case of a war, right? And men took that cost away from women and just gave them the right to vote. And this is my opinion, deterred the feminist movement from equality. And it just became about women's privilege only, because the feminists at that time saw that, oh, men just gave us something for nothing. What else can they give us something for nothing? And you see this perverse all across all timelines in feminism, where they demand to be paid the same as men, even if they don't put in the same hours as men, even if they don't have the same qualifications as men. As long as they're working the same kind of job as them, they believe they should be paid equally. And it's this false equivalency, because if you got something that someone had to pay for and you got it for free just solely based on your sex, are you really being treated equally? No, you're not. You're still being treated as a second-class citizen, except it's more positive now. Men are getting treated like second-class citizens, because in an event that a war happens, you still get to stay home and we still have to go fight for war. But I'm supposed to accept that both our votes equal the same. If I pay for a Ferrari for $400,000 and Ferrari said, oh, women only gets to pay $100K, is the Ferrari, or really the Ferraris really the same? It's not. Yeah, we made it easier for women, but most women weren't feminists, even back then. Even now, only 44% of women claim that they're feminists. And this is what perverted the whole feminist movement, in my view, that the feminists at the time allowed the men to just give them something for nothing. Right? Just because you're women. Oh, here you go. So then women, as it progressed, the feminists in second wave, third wave, they look back and they go, Oh, they got the right to vote because they're women. Okay, believe all women. Yo, you should just believe me because I'm a woman. I would have had more. I would have had more like respect if the feminist at the time was like, hey, let's take the draft away completely, so that way we can have the right to vote and we be in equal footing. That way it doesn't look like a ham, like, oh, men just gave you your rights. You didn't really fight for it, right? Because when the men said, okay, we'll let you have the right to vote, most women was like, no, 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 we don't want the right to vote, because they knew it came with something. It came with a cost, and they didn't want to pay that cost. Then the men artificially lowered the cost, and then that's when you wanted to accept it. To me, it perverted the whole movement to seem like, oh, it's just an opportunist movement. Like, we could just use equality as a guise, and we just want to gain an advantage for women just because of the basis of my sex. Essentially, you just wanted more privilege. That's just my thoughts. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section.
Early feminists included women like Mary Wollstonecraft. She wrote a book titled Vindication of the Rights of Men in 1790. That was an attempt to fight the conservatism of Edmund Burke. Basically, Burke was arguing against the French Revolution because he was saying that it was overthrowing these very important institutions and that rights couldn't be constructed out of whole cloth. She was arguing that these institutions are an imposition on women, and it's those institutions that have led to levels of...
This statement I don't agree with at all, because institutions imposed on women led to authoritarianism. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not too perverse in that. But all I know is I don't believe there's anything malicious that men at that time was doing to women. I see it as more as the men were trying to protect the women, right? Because around that time, I think this is the 1800s, there wasn't a lot of jobs that was accessible to women. So women were limited by their biology to certain jobs. Inside jobs like sewing. I think one commenter I remember I saw something about sewing. Yeah, sewing and stuff that has to deal with inside the house where they're safe and protected. Maybe they'll do some farming, help around, but a lot of the jobs that was accessible in that timeline, I believe, was hard labor. And what women want to really go out in the sun and in the sweltering heat and work hard on hard labor? No, that's not realistic. So I don't think institutions are necessarily imposing on women. I just think Mary found it maybe annoying. Maybe she hated her biology. Like, don't hate the player, hate the game. That she see that men were able to do all these things, and she felt she couldn't do it because she was a woman. And I think that kind of projected out. That's just my view. You guys let me know what you guys think.
Authoritarianism. It was a very rich ongoing argument, but Wollstonecraft ended up being wrong politically, even if she was right about the rights of women. So Wollstonecraft attached herself to the French Revolution. She led a really troubled personal life. She had affairs and kids out of wedlock and all of this. But her basic notion that women should be granted rights to vote, that was actually in line with basic classical liberal.
Yeah, I agree, but pay the same cost. Don't get something for like nothing. Like, don't let people pity you, because then they're not really treating you as equal. It's the same thing with affirmative action. I feel the same way about affirmative action. If you gave me a job and you lowered the bar because I was a particular race, I don't care if I was a particular sex, it's the same concept. Like, now I always will, like, people around me will always think I got a job because of my skin color, not because I actually was deserving of the job. It's the same thing with the feminist movement when the men just gave them the rights. I believe the men weren't thinking properly, because if you want to treat them as a human being, they must pay a similar cost, the same cost. If only women vote, Democrats will win 100% of the time. If only men vote, Republicans will win 100% of the time. And from what I've seen, every Democratic president that we had in the United States started a war, was involved in a war, or they were in more wars than a Republican president, like Barack Obama, for instance. Between Barack Obama and Donald Trump, who started more wars? Barack Obama did. So in that case, imagine Barack Obama started World War III. All the men will have to go and get drafted and possibly killed outside the country, and the women who got the same right to vote gets to stay. How is that? Does that sound fair to you? Like, how does that sound fair? You're more statistically, as a woman, you're more likely to vote for people that's going to get us into more conflict. And then we have to suffer. Men, like, if you think about it from that, like, men will have to suffer and go out and fight in the war, possibly die, and you get to say cushy. Like, that's not a fair cost, because you can make mistakes with, elections have consequences. You can make a mistake with your vote, and you don't personally pay for that error. So there's no accountability there. And that's kind of where I'm seeing it from. But let me know what you guys think.
ideals, right? That women should be treated as individuals and they have every power and ability to vote. In 1848, at the Seneca Falls Convention, you're now fast forwarding half a century, 200 women met at Seneca Falls in New York to talk about their goals. That convention was the unofficial starting point of the first wave feminist movement. Some of the big figures here are Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony. The movement was really, really tied to abolitionism. Frederick Douglass actually spoke at the...
Like, I agree, like abolitionism, hey, I want to, but like Frederick Douglass said, freedom is something you fight for, right? Is this how it started off? I think derailed the whole thing. It was like a little crack in their armor. And as time go on, they passed on the armor to the next generation, second wave. The crack just got bigger and bigger and bigger until we in present day feminism right now, where it's just you can't even, if you put them side to side, you can't even recognize that there's the same movement. But one thing that's consistent: women's rights. Nothing about equality, and that was my whole premise. That's my whole
Seneca Falls Convention. Further developments within first wave feminism came courtesy of some reformers like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, libertarians. John Stuart Mill wrote in The Subjection of Women, 1869, that women were subjected to duties as wives and mothers because the whole force of education enslaves women's minds to such roles.
At 1869, like what roles were available to women where they could actually compete and be competitive in? Being minors? I don't think they have a significant advantage there. Farming, maybe, but it was still very reliant on hard labor, physical labor, and you putting women at a disadvantage, essentially making them suffer. What else was available at the time at 1869? I didn't believe society had it out for women. I saw that society was trying to protect women and try to put them in the best position that they can be in. They're like, hey, we can make you mothers and wives. You take care of the stuff in the inside. You won't be subjugated to the harsh conditions of physical labor. We'll put you inside. I don't know what else women could have been. Maybe run for office and other things. But there's also have that willingness, that were they willing at the time to do that? And there's a culture there too. So what, we're supposed to rewrite the whole entire culture? And you see it now. Even now, women aren't happy. The women of today are the most free they ever been compared to women in 1869, but they're the most depressed. They're they're the least happy people in America right now. Comparatively, men are typically content. We don't go too up and down, but women, they're not happy compared to the women in the past. I think 1950, as early as that study go, I can't remember the particular study, but are they more happy or less happy now that this happened? I think more stress, but hey, that's the price of freedom.
So here you can actually start to see the beginnings of how first wave feminism eventually transforms into second wave feminism. There's a difference between let's obliterate the obstacles to women being involved in jobs and being involved in voting. There's a difference between that and let's get rid of all social institutions that actually forward things like motherhood and marriage.
Yeah, I just see feminism as, like when a girl comes up to me and she says, I'm a feminist. I think, okay, you're just against anything tradition. Anything that historically was the norm, you're against. Just to be against it. Not like, typical practical, like if you're being practical, say, okay, yeah, I see why men typically did this and I see why women typically do this. But here's an opportunity that women can kind of compete in the same realm. And I can agree with you. Okay, yeah. But when you go, there should be those are just roles. Like those make no sense. I'm like, yo, it worked for all time. And all of a sudden you and us in this current era think we got it all figured out when we live the same conditions as our ancestors in the past. The only thing that's different is we got technology now. And you think those roles are obsolete? Tradition is dead? No. The reason why tradition lasts is because it withstood the test of time. A time-tested idea, I'll take that over some new think, modern, unproven idea.
In first wave feminism, there were the early hints that feminism would alter gender roles in order to establish quote-unquote equality between the sexes. And equality would eventually come to mean not equality of rights, but sameness, that men and women have to be the same. In 1916, as part of the first wave feminist movement, for example, Margaret Sanger opened her first birth control clinic, a major point in the sort of inflection of the feminist movement, away from the idea that what we're really about is women voting and women being able to participate in jobs, toward the idea that we have to change women's circumstances so they can do the same things as men.
And this is just a fight against nature, honestly. Nature, God, whoever. Like feminism, I always think feminism has a flawed assumption that they believe everything's social engineering, and biology and nature has nothing to do with why women do the things they do, why women pick the careers they pick. Because I cite a study that I heard from Jordan Peterson about Scandinavia, how they're the most equalist society in the entire globe, but the sex distinctions are even greater there, because women don't have to worry about there's no pressure for women to make a lot of money or whatever. So they're like, oh, I'm just gonna go with where I'm passionate about, and usually that deals with social things, caretaker, nursing, teachers. Those are like typical women, predominantly women jobs, and men stick to things: engineering, lawyer, doctor, business owner. So you see that, hey, when you leave people to their own devices, they make choices where they're predisposed to do. And this is where I have a problem with feminism, is because they don't take any of that into account. They don't take into account that women have a time clock when it comes to having children, and that children are a big component to women's happiness. They don't take that into consideration. They're like, oh no, put that in the back burner. Something that has a time limit. At 35, after 35 you become high risk pregnancy. The feminists want you to, oh no, put that aside, focus on your career first. When in my opinion, it should be flipped. You find your partner first, then you focus on your career, because then you got the kids and stuff out of the way. You're happy. You essentially guarantee your happiness, and then you can work on your career later on. But when feminists want you to work backwards, because then when you get near that clock at 35, there's not a lot of pool of available men at that point, because there's few spaces where, unless you like actively go out of your way to, that will meet people socially. And I just think feminism don't give women like informed decision about the path that they have to move forward to. Like, in my opinion, women have to make a choice a lot sooner than men. Do you want family or do you want career? And they got to make a plan to get the most out of their life, or else they're going to feel unfulfilled. And that's just me. That's something I would tell my daughter if I ever have one.
And in defiance of biology. By the way, worth noting here, Margaret Sanger was anti-abortion. She wrote explicitly about abortion. She's in favor of birth control. She's also in favor of eugenics a little bit, but she really was not in favor of abortion.
Margaret Sanger, I think she's the founder of Planned Parenthood, and it's crazy to hear. Like, you see how much time can disrupt you. It's like you tell somebody in your ear, hey, 2 + 2 is 4, and the next person tells the person, oh, 3 + 2 is 9. I didn't say that. I said 2 + 2. How you heard 3 + 9? Right? It's the same thing here. She wasn't against the Planned Parenthood. Is essentially was supposed to be what, a pregnancy center, contraceptives, prevention. I agree with that. Like, yo, prevent pregnancy. You don't get to the point where you get pregnant and now you have to try to kill a life to sustain your current lifestyle. I don't agree with that at all. I'm a big component of contraception. Hey, I don't care. Keep it. As long as you prevent that from happening, I'm all good. To hear that, I'm like, wow. And now I wonder how she'll think of it now, if she was able to see Planned Parenthood now. It's crazy. Oh, and apparently she was racist.
Soon, the feminist movement became a full-scale attack on such gender roles. Now we're in the second wave feminist movement. That really starts in 1949 with The Second Sex by Simone de Beauvoir. Simone de Beauvoir, who is a socialist and a very far-left figure, obviously, de Beauvoir argued that femininity was disconnected from biology. Are you starting to see how...
What? Femininity was... To me, biology is the source of everything. Now, it starts you off, and then everything else take control of that. Is nature, where you predispose to stuff, and then the nurture, your environment, is what conditions you to adapt to the situation, because that's the human condition, to adapt. An environment come in, I'm in an environment where brute strength is no longer required. I have to be more knowledge based. Okay, and then you focus your energy on that. Yeah.
How this evolves to where we are today. She wrote, quote, "The female is a woman insofar as she feels herself as such." So it's an interior feeling. Some essential biological givens are not part of her lived situation. For example, the structure of the ovum is not reflected in it. By contrast, an organ of slight biological importance, like the clitoris, plays a primary role in it. So
wow. So this is where What Is a Woman started from, huh? Crazy. That she says she is not defined by her biology. I don't care. I got 2 boobs, whatever. I'm not. That's not what makes me a woman. What makes you a woman? Because I feel like I'm a woman? Feelings, emotion. No. I'm sorry. I believe in objective reality, objective truth. That's my truth thing. I don't agree with that. There's no such thing as my truth. You have your perception, and then there's the truth is objective. Like regardless of what you think of it, oh, light is like magma is hot. Regardless if I say, oh, that's water, it doesn't act like the truth is magma. It'll kill you, it'll burn you alive, whatever. That's what's consistent with magma. And even if you touch it, and you say this is water, and your hand's burning on fire, you can deny the reality all you want, but the result is true, and your hand, you will lose your hand for it. And that's what I'm trying to say. That's what truth is. Like it's undeniable, no matter how you perceive it to be. It is what it is. It just is. But you know, we live in the age of emotion now. Like age of reasoning is gone. That's old school. That's traditional. That's linear thinking. We're all about emotions, feelings. I define my own reality. And I'm gonna just stop the video right here. Like crazy, guys. You can watch the rest. I'm always with a policy like to like watch halfway through the video, so that way if you watch the original video, you have something to look forward to, and I didn't like spoil everything for you guys. But let me know what you guys think about the video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to share the video. If you found this valuable, please share it. Please feel free to share it. It helped me out a lot, and I really appreciate you guys watching the video to the end, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.